that covers a central topic. What was mentioned just a minute or two ago was collaboration, and perhaps one of the opportunities I would argue within collaboration that has the tremendous amount of opportunities within shipping is around workforce development and education. So as we just a second. All right, so this next workforce panel, or this next panel focuses on the workforce outlook, powering today's success and tomorrow's potential. We're fortunate to be joined by, and continue to be joined in the program by excellent speakers. Unfortunately, the Reverend Mark Nesselhut was not able to attend today due to an illness, so he won't be joining the panel. But we do have Fuentes. She's Vice President of Government Affairs at the Transportation Institute. The Transportation Institute is one of our partners and sponsors for today's program, and we sincerely appreciate that, Sada. In addition, Vice Admiral Joanna Nunan, the Superintendent at the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy, Christiana Gianopulos, and the President at WISTA USA, and Olivia Mattioni, Cadet at SUNY Maritime College.
Thank you so much, James. As you said, I'm Sada Fuentes at the Transportation Institute, and I'm very excited to be here today to talk about this panel, the workforce outlook, powering today's success and tomorrow's potential. As everyone in this room knows and has been discussed much today, we are nationally and globally facing a mariner workforce shortage. This shortfall, if not addressed appropriately, will have national security implications for the United States and impacts our entire global economy. We know from their public statements that Transcom and other military officials are very concerned about this shortage. The most recent U.S. government report estimated that we were short about 1,800 mariners. And this report was completed before COVID and all of its impacts. Mariners leaving the workforce, school closures and delays, and other impacts have really had a chance to take effect. So this has been a long-standing problem that has only been exacerbated by the recent pandemic. I'm excited to be leading this panel to discuss these challenges, the future of the industry, and how we can all rise to meet this moment. I also want to take a second to observe something kind of unique. This is an all-woman panel, which happened by accident, actually. Something that could not have happened by accident a decade or two ago. So it's something that says really remarkable about the role of women in this industry and how the investments and approaches that we made 20, 30 years ago were all paying off today. So a little bit about the sequence. I'm going to introduce each of our panelists, and then they will give some brief opening remarks, and they can either sit here or go to the podium, wherever they feel more comfortable. Then I'll lead a guided discussion, and then we'll try and leave some time for remarks. I'm going to try and get us done by 3:15, so we can get a little bit closer to schedule, because I know a lot of folks here are going to Coast Guard Foundation dinner afterwards. So we will do our best to stick to that. So first up, we will have Vice Admiral Joanna Nunan. Vice Admiral Nunan assumed command of the United States Merchant Marine Academy in December 2022. She is the first woman to hold this position. Nunan, who spent more than 3 decades in the United States Coast Guard, has commanded units at multiple levels, both afloat and ashore. Before retirement, she was the Coast Guard's Deputy for Personnel Readiness, and she also supervised the Coast Guard Academy and served on its board of trustees. She also served the Assistant Commandant for Human Resources. In that role, among many responsibilities, she helped spearhead efforts to expand diversity and inclusion in the Coast Guard, and she also served as a member of the Coast Guard Sexual Assault Prevention Response and Recovery Committee. Admiral Nunan graduated from the Coast Guard Academy in 1987 and received her MBA from Rensselaer Polytechnic. Admiral?
All right, thanks, Stella. Good afternoon. I'm really happy to be here for the second annual New York Maritime Security Conference, and where we did hear that industry and Transcom and the Military Sealift Command are extremely concerned about the shortfall of mariners in the workforce and its ramifications for our security and prosperity. If you are having a crisis, you must have a revolution. Industry, Transcom, and the Military Sealift Command have to revolutionize their business models and practice a brand of management that perhaps we have not seen before. They will have to compete for talent. They will have to attract them, entice them, and reward them for joining their organizations. They must show innovation and energy commensurate with the concern they have over the present state of affairs. I'll give you some good news. The Military Sealift Command is already very well aware of this. They are updating their personnel policies. They are offering very, very competitive and impressive salaries. And in doing so, they are successfully attracting a large number of graduates from Kings Point. And we do have some of our midshipmen here today from Kings Point. Can you stand up? So that's who you're attracting right there. And we also have several Kings Point graduates too. Would you mind standing up? Great, thank you. I was just in Charleston, South Carolina, giving a speech to the International Propeller Club, telling them essentially that when it comes to competing for the talent that Kings Point produces, they are in the Shark Tank. That was my analogy, the TV show Shark Tank, where the entrepreneurs must pitch their ideas to investors. As mariners, every single graduate of the United States Merchant Marine Academy is more qualified and experienced than anyone coming out of the United States Naval or Coast Guard academies or any of the state maritime schools. These graduates are going to succeed at anything they choose to do, and just as in the Shark Tank, those members of industry must pitch their cultures to our midshipmen. Here's a brief extract from the beginning of that speech which illustrates my point. By the way, a quick note, if you're not familiar with Kings Point, our midshipmen can either enter active duty service or go into the commercial fleet. Last year, 26% of the graduating class went on to active duty. On campus, we have a young, cool dude, a Marine Corps B-22 Osprey pilot, and a Kings Point graduate, who is in charge of attracting talent to the Marine Corps. He has a bunch of midshipmen up every morning. They're running or lifting, they hit the obstacle course, leadership classes, or attend summer programs like Leatherneck. One day, one of the old maritime industry alumni said to me, "This is no good. He's taking away too many mariners. You have to get rid of this guy." I said, under no circumstances will I get rid of this guy. If you want mariners, then you're going to have to up your game. Make your sea year experience fantastic for these folks. Make them want to join your company and culture more than they want to be a United States Marine. Another note, the term sea year pertains to the fact that our students spend a full year at sea on various ships from the Military Sealift Command and from industry. The reason why I use the Shark Tank analogy for this speech is that when I was the head of human resources in the Coast Guard, we had some extra money to allocate. So we set up a Shark Tank in order to invest in the Coast Guard components who had the best ideas to enhance recruiting and retention. That was revolutionary. I think that as today's discussion continues, we will have to talk about recruiting at the high school level and even younger. We'll have to talk about the untapped potential of women and ethnic minority groups and the business of culture change. How do you change a culture? How do you pitch your culture to young talent? I have some experience doing that in the Coast Guard, and I look forward to sharing this in the course of today's discussion. Thank you.
Next, we have Christiana Gianopulos. Christina is currently the president of the Women's International Trading and Shipping Association, WISTA USA. I believe we have a few members. I'm one myself. She is also the business development manager at American Ship Repair, and has previously served as the Office of the Executive Director at the Alexander S. Onassis Public Benefit Foundation. She is on the College Council of SUNY Maritime. Christina holds a BA from Barnard College and a master's degree from International Media and Communications and Energy from Columbia University School of International Public Affairs. Christina?
Thank you so much, Sarah. First of all, Admiral Nunan, you guys like really pumped right now, so thank you. And it's really important because I'll start just by giving you a little bit of a brief introduction to WISTA, because I imagine there are a lot of people in this room who aren't as familiar with what we do. WISTA USA is a networking organization that supports and empowers women in our industry. It was started 25 years ago. We just celebrated a big anniversary in DC where we had Admiral Phillips, Admiral Fagan, Sarah Fuentes, and we are now up to 900 members, just about 900 members. We have 12 chapters across the country. But we're part of a bigger organization, VAdm International, which is present in 56 countries and has almost 4,000 members. We have a consultative status at the IMO, with whom we work very closely on workplace issues. So we're not just a small organization of ladies who get together. You know, I think 25 years ago, there was a misconception of what this organization would be. Here at WISTA USA, we also have male members because we're very proud of the allies who propel our mission forward. And we are dealing every day with the workforce issue on a number of levels. So we're supporting our members who are already in the industry, but we're very aware of the fact that the academies and schools need our support to get women to apply. So we make sure that our members are going out both to high schools and colleges, because the industry today is so different, right? I mean, you've always had a complicated industry. Our finance deals are more complicated than, you know, your average finance deal. Our assets are bigger, more expensive, and more complicated than other industries. But now you're asking your onboard crews to do things like carbon capture, deal with software, environmental equipment. So we know that we need the best of across the board, and WISTA is very much an engine for our organization to make sure we're not leaving half of the population of the best of, you know, to go into the technology industry or public relations. We need the best of, and we take our role in the industry to help bring them here very seriously.
Thank you so much, Christina. We're really grateful for all that you do. Our final speaker is Olivia Mattioni. Olivia is from Plymouth Meeting, Pennsylvania, and is a senior at SUNY Maritime College. She is receiving a deck license while majoring in marine transportation, and she is set to graduate this January after sitting for license exams. On campus, she is involved in multiple clubs and organizations, including women's soccer, women of maritime, all while working at the library. She is also a security company commander. While on summer sea term this past summer, she had the leadership position of Assistant Division Officer, responsible for numerous under and upperclassmen, earning her the Cadet of the Cruise Award. After graduation, she plans on using her license. Olivia?
I just wanted to start by thanking Wayne Spear for allowing me to speak and sharing my perspective as a cadet. And while I haven't fully entered the industry, last summer I was a cadetship with Military SEALs Command, so I'm excited to share my perspective from, you know, my focus of the industry, cadetshipping, but not fully there yet, and my experience as a cadet, especially as a girl at SUNY Maritime. And I just can't wait to share how I think the maritime industry can improve and what we can do for our cadets and people that haven't gone to the academies yet, and people that have graduated, so I'm really excited to share.
Olivia, why don't you tell us a bit about what attracted you to the industry and how you found SUNY Maritime in the first place?
So originally, while I was in high school, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I just knew that I wanted to get out of college and have basically a set job and making decent money, and have a set career path. So originally I started kind of looking at the military, then I found military academies, and then that led me to SUNY, kind of through that branch. So I went to SUNY, and I really appreciated that I had a set career path. I basically knew that I would have a job after graduating and a high-paying job. And then also, I don't believe that there's any other career that can give you the time off that it does, that allows you to have that freedom. If there's something else out there, I'd be surprised, but from what I've seen, this is pretty much it. So yeah, it was just all those three things attracted me, as well as the traveling during work. And then the small campus community really appealed to me as well. I like to be able to know the people that I'm in class with, and my professors as well. And I think events like this, you don't really get at other schools, especially big schools. You know, you kind of are one in the crowd, whereas here, people actually know your name and know your face. So those are all really important things to me.
Thank you so much. I'm glad you found your way to us. We need dedicated folks like you. So my first question is for Christina, and also I'd like to hear everyone else's thoughts as well. What matters more, the percentage of women in the industry or women in leadership positions? We've got Admiral Nunan, we've got Admiral Phillips, Linda Fagan, Jennifer Carpenter at AWO. We have a lot of women in leadership positions, almost for the first time where it seems like a real majority of women in leadership positions in the industry. How does that affect women coming up and sailing? And I'd love to hear everyone else's thoughts as well as how the prominence of women has affected female participation in this workforce.
I think it's incredibly important for us to celebrate those moments, but look, we can't just celebrate them, you have to continue to do the work because it's no good if you just have one, you need a second, a third, a fourth, you've only been successful when you stop counting. But the thing that's really important, I think, for the cadets and for people like Olivia is that when you have really young, talented people and they're planning their careers and they look at an industry or they look at a company and you have no women in the C-suite, you have no women on your board, these young people see that there's a ceiling and they're not going to bring their talents to you because they are ambitious and they are smart and they want to do things. So it's really important for us to understand that it isn't just about a moment, it's about a transformational time that this generation will really get to benefit from.
I will choose not to choose one of those. I think you really need both. You need women at the top, and you really need women at every level of the organization. If you look at a culture of any organization, the culture is really often established more in the lower ranks, not in the upper ranks. So you really want women at each level, and I think in each of your organizations, you should take a look at that. If you look at the junior people coming in, the mid-level managers, and at the top, is there a place where there is not diversity, women, minorities? And if there's not, why is that? Is your culture not the right place to be? So the only way they come back is at the very top when these are the folks, like you mentioned, Admiral Phillips, who have really proven themselves over and over again. Those are the folks that, kind of made it all the way to the top. But if you don't have women throughout the ranks, and I'll just say minorities throughout the ranks, I think you haven't gotten it right yet.
Olivia, what do you think? Is it inspiring to you to see this women leadership, or do you care more about seeing women as classmates?
I would say it's a mix of both. Being at SUNY, I think the demographic is 85% male, 15% female. So while we still do have a lot of work to do, I can say that I do see more women throughout all the clubs and all of the opportunities at school, and I think they truly take advantage of every opportunity given to them. I think being on sports teams as well, like the soccer team and other clubs like Women in Maritime, has allowed us to kind of band together. And when there's an event like this, like we reach out to the other girls and we say, oh, come to this, like come get your name out there, come get your face out there. And I think it's really important that we all do, it sounds corny, but we all do help each other out, and stick together because we are stronger when we help each other. And I think that's really important as well. And getting those women in leadership roles, as you were saying, I think it's, I wouldn't say easier, but I think it's much more feasible now. I think that there is a possibility of it actually occurring, whereas I don't know in the past if that would even kind of went across people's minds. So I do appreciate everyone that's been there, that's kind of put their foot forward and helped like me get to where I am,
Admiral Nunan, your Coast Guard career, a significant chunk of it was spent on developing people and really finding their potential and making sure that you maximize the potential of the people in your care in the Coast Guard. How have those lessons helped you at the Merchant Marine Academy?
During the last few years of my career, I was absolutely focused on personnel issues, training issues, overseeing the Coast Guard Academy. And one of the things that the Coast Guard did that was really fabulous, and I think it's kind of like a simple answer, like how do you know what people want? Ask them. So the Coast Guard hired RAND, and they did a women's retention study, and this focused on officers and enlisted, to really ask them why they stay, why they leave the Coast Guard, because the Coast Guard recognized the retention of men in the Coast Guard was higher. And so with what we learned from that, I was able to work on policies to improve retention of women in the Coast Guard. Then the Coast Guard did a second study, and it was actually much broader, and it had to do with underrepresented minorities. They also focused on women again, and it was everything from recruiting to developing to retaining. And they asked people, what's helping you succeed? What is a barrier to your success? And then we were able to come up with policies around it. And I think what that really told me is I really spent my whole 35-year career in the Coast Guard actually thinking about these things even before I was really in personnel. I was on 5 different cutters, 4 as the only woman on the cutter, and various places in my career. And I always thought it would just organically happen, just over time. There's gonna be more women, there's gonna be more minorities, and sort of you get towards the end of my career, and I realized it doesn't just happen. You have to make it happen. You have to have policies, you have to have accountability, you have to work harder to get the word out to women who aren't necessarily, that's not necessarily what people are thinking that they should be doing. So you have to work at it. So that's one of the things I've learned, and so those are some of the thoughts I'm taking to my job at Kings Point.
Well, Christina, what have you heard from your members in terms of, I'm sure you asked them a lot, what are the things that make them want to be a part of the maritime industry? And Olivia, I'm going to want you to answer that same question too. What is it about the quality of life that could be improved to make it more appealing to people in your generation? Christina,
I mean, our members, I think, are dedicated to the international world of shipping, right? So I'm looking out here, I mean, half of the women in this audience who are here are on a plane every month. I don't know that the quality of life is what draws us to it. I think it's the intellectual challenge. I think for me personally, our company works very closely with our clients on environmental compliance. So it's a constant renewal of challenges. It's a chance to make the world a little bit of a better place. I don't think that any of our members would say that the quality of life, I don't know how it's
I guess the question is more, how could the quality of life be improved to make it more appealing?
I think that's a policy question that is outside of just our industry and really is a question for the United States in terms of how we address family leave, maternity leave, and a lot of these issues. So bigger than us.
Yeah, that's something that we've heard a lot in thinking about why people leave. It's because they miss their families, if they don't have that satellite, that ability to call home or talk to their family. And so many of the young generations too, their life is lived online. And so that's a big gap. Olivia, I know you mentioned that you keep in touch through your soccer with a lot of friends who have graduated who are sailing. What do you hear from them, and what are your concerns about the quality of life or challenges the life at sea?
So yeah, I'm very fortunate in that I was part of the soccer team and I was previously part of the lacrosse team. So we do have that tight-knit group. And I think there have been a lot of strides made to make sure that women specifically feel more inclined to be in the industry. I know that this past summer when I was with the Military Season Command, they made sure that I had another female cadet with me, and I think that honestly made my experience just so much better. If she wasn't there, it would have been just so much more difficult for me. It's good to have another face around that you know you can rely on. So that was the point for me, is making sure that there's another female with you. And then having my soccer friends and my lacrosse girlfriends as well, they've all graduated now because I'm a senior now, and they report back to me and they say, oh, like, go to this company, do this, like, this is what's good about it, this is what's not. And I think having that almost mentorship is really, really important. Just to, like I honed on before, just to rely on those female friends as well to make sure that you know kind of what to expect when you get into the industry. And I think we've already kind of mentioned it, but having that connection with, whether it be Wi-Fi on a ship or something like that, just to stay in touch with people and know that you're not alone while you're out there. It is difficult, it does kind of take a toll on you, but I think with those type of installations, it would really, really help. Just something small as that would make the life, a million times better. Having another female and having Wi-Fi on ships to connect with people while you're away.
Thank you very much. Yeah, because we've heard from the carriers and the companies that they're just throwing money at graduates. They still can't convince people to sail, so it must be something else.
I also think that it kind of falls onto the academy's responsibility as well, in that I think there's a lot of people in high school and even before that would be interested in the maritime industry and going to an academy. It's just they simply aren't aware that it's an option. Every time I go home, like for example, this break, I had a little bit of a break between my last senior cruise and the start of the semester, and I was working, and everyone would ask me, oh, where do you go to school? I'd say SUNY Maritime. They'd be like, what is that? And then I'd have to kind of explain what it is, and then as well explain what the industry is. And every single time, it was always a good reaction. They'd be like, wow, that is so interesting, that's so cool you do that. But I've never even heard of that. And it's like, how did you even know how to get into that? So I was lucky, I kind of happened to find it, but other people aren't as lucky. I think people do want an option like this, a set career path, like all the things I was talking about, having a great job, especially I think it's really hard to get a job nowadays. So that was what attracted me, and I think there are kids out there that would be attracted to that. I just think they don't know that it's there, So if you don't know anyone that's done it, it's really, really hard to find it. So I think it like relies on the academies and the industry as well to get it out there. And like SUNY, I'm only 3 hours away from SUNY, but most of the people around me have never even heard of it before. So it's like, how's that possible, you know? So I think it's really important for the academies to just get their message out there and tell people what the industry is and, you know, all the great benefits of it. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting industry because it's so silent, right? We're working well and nobody thinks about us until like
Until they don't get their Pelotons during the pandemic.
right, or you run out of toilet paper. Yeah, and then you think about it. So it's one of those things with running well. It's kind of silent, and so it's how do we do that at public relations campaign? Admiral Nunan, what is recruitment like? In your military academies, it must be a little bit different where you have help from Congress and schools, but what has your experience been with recruitment and attracting students to White?
So we just brought in our last class this summer. We were shooting for incoming class of 280. We were just a couple below that. So I'll just say we have successfully brought in a very qualified class. However, if you look at the numbers of who is applying to any of the academies, really the numbers are precipitously dropping. So I agree with Olivia, we all need to do a good job getting the word out. You are required to have a congressional nomination to come to Kings Point, and that works out for us quite a bit, because a lot of times people are applying to go to the Naval Academy or West Point, and the congressman or senator only has so many nominations to go around and says, hey, what about the Merchant Marine Academy? And they look it up and they're like, oh, that sounds great. And so we do get some people that way, which I'm very happy about. We just hired our new public affairs director, and he is quite good at putting together video, and he's gonna get us a little bit, as my 9-year-old said, Mom, you need to up your Instagram game. We're gonna up our social media game, because really nobody can tell the story better, as you can hear with Olivia here, than our midshipmen cadets telling the story of traveling all around the world, the experiences they have, how much money they're going to make when they graduate, that they have a job waiting for them, and just everything that happens at a school that you really appreciate. So we're going to have to work harder at it to make sure that we still are able to attract the best people for our academy.
And Christina, you guys are doing that big launch, right?
Yes, so WISTA USA is very happy this fall. We're going back to school, and every chapter will visit at least one school with a focus mostly on high schools. We will be visiting some colleges. We have a big event at the Coast Guard Academy. So it's something very much present on our minds. I also just want to give a shout out to NMEPA, Carlene Walker. They do a great job of engaging the schools, especially even elementary schools. But in terms of social media, it is an untapped tool for our industry. The cruise industry does a much better job than the commercial side, but it's something that I think we all have to do, and not just LinkedIn. We have to be like where the young people are, and they are not on LinkedIn.
There's a tough tension, right? Because you also have like national security concerns and that type of thing. But you're right, young people are not on LinkedIn, unfortunately.
I don't even want to be on LinkedIn.
Let's see. So Olivia, how do you think, besides as a PR firm, if we were to run, our social media campaign, how could we make sailing more attractive to people of your generation?
So whenever I explain what I do on cadet shipping, or when I was out at sea for my MUG cruise, or this past year, I tell them the places I go and the things that I do, and the fact that I had to share a room with like 60 other girls, they always think it's like so crazy, and they're like, wow, that is just amazing. So I think if we were to really stress and hone in on the experiences you get while at sea, because that is what we're at the school to do. I think really honing in on that, showing pictures from going out to sea. My friend made this really amazing video, like a montage video from this past summer, like just showing stuff like that. Whenever she shows someone, they're like, wow, that is just the coolest thing. So I think really honing in on those experiences that you don't get anywhere else. And then also just like the regimental life, some people look at it as a downside. I see it as a positive. I think it's really awesome that we're able to bond so closely with the class, and when you're walking around, you actually know people that you're living with and seeing every day. So I think all those kind of upsides of being a small school, we should definitely stress that. And then just the experiences that you get at sea. Like last summer, I was in Japan and San Diego, and it was just really awesome to be there. Nobody else that I know from my hometown has ever been to those types of places. So it's something to brag about.
See the world.
Yeah, it's really awesome.
Admiral, have you noticed kind of what makes a student decide to sail versus sign up for the military versus find a job ashore? Have you kind of, I know it hasn't been that long, but have you kind of noticed any trends in terms of what makes sailing appealing to students, sailing commercially?
Well, I'll take a shot at it, but I will love for my regimental commander, Katie McGillicuddy, can chime in. But what I believe is making a difference in our midshipmen when they go to see their cadets. Their sea year really makes a difference, and part of the sea year is not just going on different types of ships, different companies, military sea lift command, but during that time they're also going on internships, which are usually like about 2 weeks long. And that could be anything. That could be at a naval air station, that could be on a Coast Guard cutter, that could be at a admiralty law firm, that could be, you know, sort of, and folks kind of make their own opportunities to many, to a pretty good extent. Like somebody knows somebody and they get out there and they have those experiences. And then like Olivia was saying, they tell their friends, this ship was really good, this company was really good, don't work for these folks. So I really think that's kind of what I said in my earlier remarks, is that you really have to make sure, like think of these cadets on your ships as they are very, very high-end interns. And so you want them to see that your company is going to help them progress in their career professionally, that you're going to have opportunities for them to have flexibility personally, and I think those actual experiences make a difference. So I'm going to ask Katie if she wants to add anything, and she doesn't need a mic.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Joanna Nunan said, I am Midshipman Katie McGillicuddy. I'm Regimental Commander at the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy right now, and I've had phenomenal experiences at sea. This past year, I spent about 4 months on a Maersk container ship from the Maersk, Ohio. We called in Norfolk, Charleston, Houston, and over to Europe in Antwerp, Rotterdam, and Germany. And then my favorite ship that I sailed on, I was on the MT Evergreen State, which is a product tanker. We were MSC time chartered, so we were loading in commercial ports. We load jet fuel, diesel for the military, and then discharge in military installations, whether it was Norfolk, Virginia, Houston, all the way down to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. The experience that I had was exceptionally well. The crew was amazing. The crew was there trying to recruit me because they knew how short-handed they were sailing. Every ship I sailed on, we were sailing short, always. We always had to get a waiver from the U.S. Coast Guard saying you were cleared to sail without an AD, without an extra third mate, without this person. So trying to recruit people to go out there, I think in a large part of it does come from the culture aboard those vessels. And I was fortunate to have 2 phenomenal ships that really encouraged me and they pushed me over the edge. I want to sail on tankers, and that's because of the crew members that I had on my ship, the way they trained me, the way they treated me, and the way that they encouraged me when I had questions and things like that. So, thank you.
Great, we're so glad to hear you had such a positive experience and that you want to continue sailing. That's a wonderful story. So it sounds like it's a lot of cultural changes that we need to make. So what are those types of cultural changes that our industry should be making that you think would incentivize more people to sail?
I'm gonna let Admiral Nunan and Olivia take this one.
So I think, Katie kind of got at it. Really, the cultural change is not that hard. It's really just treating people with respect. That's kind of the bottom line. It's not that hard. So I think, the people on your ships need to know that there are rules of how people are supposed to be treated, and then if people do not follow those rules, there is accountability. I think that's really important. One of the things I really like that Military Sea Lift Command is doing, I think this gets to culture, is they're really cultivating a culture where family members can sail together. I can tell you when I was in the Coast Guard, I think the Navy the same way, like if you're married to someone, you are not sailing on the same ship as them or your mother. But in the Military Sea Lift Command, I was hearing a story from the commander where they had 2 sisters that were both, I think they were both unlicensed, and they had a family day, their mother came on board, and the mother is like, could I do this? Next thing you know, the mother is sailing. I think they were all unlicensed. They were just having so much fun, and the crew really liked this family environment. So think out of the box like that. What if you did allow people to bring their best friend or their sister or even their spouse to come sail on the ship? Because if you're on a big ship and your spouse is not on the ship with you, and they're on another ship, you probably will not be seeing that person very often. So I think you really have to look at that and then ask them, what would it take to keep you longer? A lot of times people want to make sure that they do have breaks, that they have ability to do other things, where maybe it's taking care of a family member or starting a family, that they don't lose all of their seniority and they can come back. So I think those are some of the types of things that you can do, and accountability is one of them. You have to hold people accountable. You don't want to have a culture where people are afraid to speak up. because they're worried about retaliation, or they're worried that they won't be able to continue serving on at that company.
It sounds like that connection to home is really what's critical. You know, when you're young, you want to get away from home and you want to see the world, but when you want to start making a family of your own, you need to be able to make those connections and really reinforce the connections that you've made. So we talked a lot about women and female and gender diversity, but there's so many different types. There's geographic, there's racial diversity. We do have a lot of that racial diversity in the deep sea trades, according to the unions. But that geographic diversity can be really challenging. I'm on the Hill a lot, and we get bipartisan support from all of our issues, but what we don't have is geographic support. You know, if you're in a landlocked state like Utah, you're much less likely to be supportive of maritime priorities than you are if you're from Louisiana, Florida, Texas. How can we find these different areas, and most important about our country on the coast as well? How can we increase that geographic and racial diversity in the maritime industry?
I mean, I think it comes down to the central problem that our industry has, is we have a PR problem, right? The people in Utah get 90% of their things from the ships that we are all fighting for. They need to know that. So we need to do a better job of letting people know why our industry is important in this country. We probably need to do a better job of working together to do that. It would be much more impactful. But in terms of a really important kind of diversity that we need, I think, is really an educational diversity, because technology is changing and we have these huge sustainability goals that we're trying to reach. We need people who are software developers, we need people who are fuel experts, we need people who are finance experts. I mean, we really have to sort of open up our arms a little bit and start to bring in people with different backgrounds.
It does go back to kind of what I said earlier about the Maritime Academy's recruiting. I think if they look out, I know SUNY is obviously a New York State school, so that, you know, the majority of kids are going to be from New York State. But I do think if they were to look outwards to other states, you know, just even along the East Coast, when you look other places, you're going to find other people, and so that, you know, right there ups diversity and ups, you know, the chances of other people with different backgrounds coming into SUNY as well. And so I just think it should be a collective effort from, you know, all the state maritime academies as well as KP, to really hone in on getting people from different parts of the country and going different places, and SUNY going to other, you know, high school, career, or college fairs and outside of just Long Island, because that's really what's important, is getting people to know that there is an option here. And even, you know, if they don't want to sail specifically, you can still go to school and do other things within the maritime industry. It's still a great opportunity, and I know we do need sailors, but even if you don't want to sail, there is still an opportunity within SUNY. So just making sure that they can go to other places outside of the state, I think is really, really important, and for all the academies as well.
For Kings Point in particular, because we do have students from every state in the union, partly through the congressional nomination process. That means we have parents from every state in the union, and they're in parents associations. We have alumni that are out and about. So those for us are all really, really helpful. I think, you know, just an educational campaign, you know, for all the folks on the Hill is really, really important, because it doesn't take too much to really show them, whatever state you're from, whether you're on the coast or on the Great Lakes, or just, you know, there's no water anywhere nearby. It's very important to their economies. And so partly it's just sort of, you know, doing the math, showing them how important it is, and then potentially, you know, just all kind of bounding together. Because I think Olivia's point is right, that when people see that, you can go sail on a ship and have a great career and do something that's really important for your country. I think it does sell itself, but you have to be able to tell your story. So I definitely know we're going to try to do a way better job of getting the word out.
Let me ask one more question before I turn it to the audience. I think we'll have time for one or two questions, so please start thinking about that while we get this last question in. In an ideal world, what will the industry look like 20 years from now when Olivia is a captain? What will our industry look like? What will the size be? How will the U.S. flag fleet be sized? What's the future of the industry?
I know it's kind of obvious, but on my ship last summer, there was no female licensed officers. I think the only female we had was the female cook. So just like I said, it's the obvious, but I really am excited to see more women from my class and, you know, the classes surrounding me to have more female officers. I'm really looking forward to it. To be under like a female chief mate or a female captain it would be really awesome. I'd love to learn from her and hopefully it happens in the future.
I mean, I'd love to see WISTA have put ourselves out of business. You know, I'd love to see a diverse industry. I think the challenge in 20 years will not be so much about gender diversity. We'll be finding the balance between, you know, AI and humans, which is a whole other scary thing. But I really, when I meet the cadets, you know, whether it's at SUNY or at these conferences, one thing I do know is that we have every reason to be very optimistic about the future of our industry, because I think the students that we're getting are smarter and more worldly, and I think they also are really good about asking for what they want. So I think that sets them up for success.
I agree. I mean, they're our future, and that's why I'm very hopeful too, that not only are they gonna bring diversity and good ideas and innovation, but they're gonna be our future leaders of captains of industry. So I think it's just gonna be a safer, it's gonna be a smarter future, and it's gonna look a lot more diverse.
And I look forward to watching that from the beach where I will have a tire. We both hopefully. Do we have any audience questions? Yes.
I'm Gianopulos from Maritime College, and I actually have a question for all of you. You mentioned the idea of bringing spouses on ships. I was wondering what you think about bringing children on ships. So under the age of 5, in lieu of an extended maternity leave, because you know that many women must forcibly leave the industry as soon as they have a child to be primary caregiver. What is your idea about, what are your thoughts about bringing families on ships and how?
I can tell you really good, some friends of mine, the Ketchums, they both were in the Coast Guard, but then they took a break out of the Coast Guard and they sailed on Mercy ships, not the USNS Mercy, but the Mercy ships that go all around Africa and do surgeries and things like that. They brought their kids with them. And both their kids were little when they started, and both their sons ended up graduating from West Point, so it didn't hurt their prospects. And it was exactly what you're talking about. Those are the kind of just fairly, to me, obvious, not obvious to everybody else, that we should be thinking like that.
I just want to say that that question makes me so happy, because at one of my first events when I came into the industry, there was an executive who stood up and said, "My children are my dirty secret." And so to have progressed so far to having this kind of a conversation on stage, I think speaks to incredible progress. Really?
Oh, I just want to mention, first off, that's interesting because that means we're going back to the age of sales. So we're bringing sales engines, we're bringing families on board. We're making progress. But I also, speaking of progress, we've been talking more on the gender diversity because of the composition of the panel. But there are other requirements to bring mariners into our industry, and that's investing in connectivity. Only 50% of the U.S. flag fleet has connectivity. And I don't know anybody in this room who would willingly go offshore and not be connected. So I'm just encouraging all of us. We heard about in the Arctic panel, we heard about VAdm investing in Starlink. I think we need to make sure that that connectivity is available. Otherwise, we're not going to get the best and the brightest. Because it's not just about attracting and retaining women, it's about getting today's generation to be attractive.
Yeah, I think that's a big one, and from, you know, anecdotally what we've heard from the carriers, a lot of them are making that investment now, because that's what they've heard from their crews. That's what they've heard, is that they need to invest in Starlink, they need to invest in that connectivity, because people want to be able to talk to their families. So I'm pretty sure every carrier has heard that loud and clear. If they haven't already done it, they are pretty much on their way to making investments for that. Is there one more question?
Yeah, it's Captain Metcalf. I've got a comment from the dinosaur. I'm sorry, but I think 45 years I've been in this industry has been incredible changes. I'm not against change at all. But I'm also going to try to remind some of our new smart young people coming into the industry that gender diversity is something that's very, very important. Don't forget about your brothers in the industry.
male allies and women are a huge part of it. And also, frankly, the shortage is so significant that we really need everyone. So we really need to be pulling from Cornfield, we got people from every corner of the United States. Anybody who wants to join, I think the industry is welcome to having them. We're just trying to figure out how we can reach everyone, because I think the industry is at a point where we need all the talent we can get, and it's figuring out how we can reach all those folks. And the lessons I've really heard have been, connectivity, finding a way to make sure people can connect with their families, creating a good workforce culture on board the ship, and also, frankly, a public relations campaign is something that we hear over and over again, and that's something that the industry really needs to come together on, and advertising ourselves, even though we're not used to doing that. We're kind of the future steps that we need to take to make sure that we can really capture all of this potential talent of the future. So with that, does anyone have any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Hello, I'm Cadet Christiana from Student Maritime College. I'm a senior. I'm also the Student Government Association president, the only voting delegate for our school in the SUNY system for our school, as well as the only student representative for the presidential search. And I guess my question that goes out to you is, there's a lack of mariners out in the industry, but for my 4 years in college, I've noticed that there's a lack of students in the dorms. And I think that what needs to happen is a rebrand of the name mariner. You don't have to shut out for 8 months. You don't have to sleep in a hammock. You don't have to hold a bottle of rum. These things are all associated with our home friends when we go there, and they look at you and you're a sailor and you've got that. So I guess my question to you is how do you expect these corporations to go to these high school students, these colleges, and kind of explain to them that you could do 3 weeks off, you could do 3 weeks off if you want to do 6 months. How do we start that progress of not looking at why we don't have parents, but students? I had the opportunity to sell on T.S. Kennedy this summer with Texas A&M, Maine, Cal, Massachusetts, and us, and talking to all the students, I'm starting to realize that it's every academy that's lacking students.
Yeah, I think that was a real COVID impact too, where people, just because of the nature of the pandemic, got stuck on ships for longer than they were supposed to, and that kind of that choice went away a little bit. But now that it's back, it's something that we really need to communicate, is that ability to set your own schedule. But I think we did lose a lot of mariners due to that change that was created by circumstance that we got away from. But you're absolutely right. We need to reinforce that to more people. Any other thoughts? I know you're about to.
We just hosted a career fair recently at Kings Point. We do it in the spring and in the fall. And we had our largest number of companies and entities that came this year. I think it was about 48 different groups. They all each had booths. Some of them were tugboats all the way up to container ships and scientific vessels. So I think almost like going to a college fair, our students got to go and talk to the different people about their different lifestyles, because they're all very different. So he's right, not everybody goes out to sea for 8 months. Some people go out to sea for a few hours and then come back. And so I think if, and people are wanting to go do those things. So I don't know if a regular career fair, like for a high school student, if, maybe the companies could think about doing that, even though you're not the usual place that you would go, but that might be a great way to start selling people. And you could do this world by going to college or not going to college. There's different paths that you can take.
I just, WISTA does these, visits to schools. All of the academies have their fairs, but there's no reason that every single person in this room can't go into a local school, their children's school, their grandchildren's school. I mean, the onus is on all of us to really show the breadth of our industry.
So it was a great marching order from WISTA for us all to take with us. And I know there's a lot of peers in the audience too, and I know they appreciated hearing the perspective from all the students, from the cadets and midshipmen about what you guys are seeing and what you are hearing. And I know that they're all eager to talk to you. So thank you all for being here a part of today. And thank you all very much for this panel. Let's give our panelists a round of applause.
Thank you, Sada, and to each of the panelists. We appreciate the conversation, the questions, and we want to continue that for our final panel for today. As our panelists come up and get set, we're going to take about a 5-minute break. So if you have to stretch your legs, 5-6 minutes, please do so. We have this just as a run of order. We have a final panel, and then closing remarks by the Commandant of the U.S. Coast Guard.
Chris?